Good evening, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. For those who are first to see this show, let me just give a bit of background. This initiative came about as a result of Southeast Asia TV, and the idea is to try to learn from the experience, from the know-how, from the exposure of personality, whether they are international or they are working in the region, or for that matter, national personality who have experience. And we hope that in this frank exchange, we'll be able to discuss on certain thematic, and hopefully certain idea transpire, certain initiative come about, certain good practice may arise. And we hope that some of the viewers out there would find some of this idea or best practice helpful in their life, in their business, or in their development work, whether they are in the government, the private sector, or civil society. Today, the thematics of our show is about private equity fund in Cambodia. And we have the pleasure to have with us a very experienced, seasoned professional coming to discuss with us, to have a talk with us on private equity fund in Cambodia. His name is Mr. Douglas Clayton, and he's the founder and CEO of Leopard Capital. Welcome, Douglas.
Thank you very much.
Well, Douglas, before we move on to the substantive discussion, perhaps you may want to say something a bit about yourself, your background a bit, when you come to Cambodia, and how do you end up creating Leopard Fund?
Sure. I'm an American, and I've been living in Asia for 25 years. I've lived in 4 different countries. I've been working in finance all of that time. I've watched different countries go through transformation. 25 years ago, all of Asia looked a little bit like Cambodia today, but now certain countries are well in advanced. And I decided that Cambodia might be the next country to progress, to grow and transform. So 3.5 years ago, I moved here, and I set up an investment group called Leopard Capital to try to create the first Cambodia investment fund. And we launched that in 2008, and it's gone quite well.
Well, you know, for a lot of us, for the last, since 1993, we see a lot of foreign investment coming into Cambodia in the form of FDI, foreign direct investment. We see factory building up, we see shoes factory, garment factories. So that's what's in our mind, foreign direct investment. And then in the last couple of years, we've been sort of like hopeful in the sense that in a few years' time, we will have a stock exchange, which is more, selling, raising capital through a stock exchange. So you have the both extreme. And somewhere here you are, private equity fund, you're not, subject to the listing of the stock exchange. You're not a direct foreign investor building a factory, to produce things. You are somewhere in between. I think it's important we dispel this myth, this confusion in the mind. Maybe you want to say something a bit, the difference of a capital fund.
Sure. Most of the businesses in Cambodia are either family businesses or multinationals. The difference with a fund is that we invest in a business to sell it later, whereas a family business may hold it for the next generation and pass it to their children, or a multinational may be in that business forever. But a fund is sort of an interim source of capital. So our objective is to take shares in a company, to grow that company, and then to sell it to somebody else, possibly to the founder of the company, or possibly to a multinational, or possibly list the company on the stock exchange. But we're always looking for our exit from the investment. Secondly, usually we don't take the majority control of a company. We take a minority position, less than 50%, and we contribute to the growth of the company, but we don't try to run the company. We back somebody else who knows that business better. We provide capital, advice, and assistance, and try to create value in the company so that we can sell at a higher price later.
Private equity fund mean what? Mean there are private investors behind. And private investors are all around the world. What determines, what motivates them? What make them decide to pick a particular country? You know, in this case, Cambodia. You as a fund creator, a fund manager, what would you go to convince them why Cambodia is one of the country they should invest?
First, let me explain. We raised money into our fund from overseas investors. We did not accept any money from Cambodian investors because our mission was to try to bring foreign investment into the country. So we went around the world. I went to 55 different cities in the years 2008 and 2009, telling the story of Cambodia. These are professional investors, sophisticated investors. So they make investments around the world in usually in larger countries. But most of them knew very little about Cambodia. So I had to explain the story. And in most people's mind, they associate Cambodia with the situation 30 years ago, the tragic period of Cambodia. And they haven't heard too much about it since because it's a small country and it doesn't make the economic news very often outside of Cambodia. So I had to explain the basics of the country, what was special about Cambodia, why, even though they were interested in China or India or larger places, why they should put part of their money into a small country that they hadn't really understood. So it was an educational process. But there are certain things about Cambodia that are very compelling, which is why I chose to live here and to base my career, my future career here. The key thing is we explained that this is one of the most open economies in Asia. If you were to do business in China or India or Vietnam or Thailand, as a foreign investor, you're subject to many restrictions. Cambodia is much more open, so foreign investors can invest here and have the same rights in most cases as local investors. This is not normally the case, and it's very appreciated by those foreign investors like ourselves that are here. So that was one thing I had to explain to people. Secondly, I had to explain that the population in Cambodia is very young. About 2/3 of the people here were not alive during the tragic period. They're the young generation, and they have a different objective, in my view, for what they want this country to be. So they're looking forward, and when other people look at Cambodia and they look backward, I think most Cambodians are looking forward. So I had to explain that this is a country that can change very rapidly because of its youthfulness, and there's a great degree of hunger for education. People want to get ahead. So there's sort of a work ethic here, which I think is quite positive. And then I had to explain about the resources of the country, that this country is capable of producing a lot of food, mining, possibly oil, has a lot of tourism sites. And so there's a lot of natural attractions to the country which can be developed and can make it a wealthy country one day. Many people think of Cambodia as a poor country. I think of it as a future wealthy country because an open economy with a young population and a lot of resources has all the ingredients. Now that it's politically stable, it has the ingredients to be a very attractive place to invest.
So you've been up and running for 3 years already so far, right?
Yes.
4 years.
3.5 years.
3.5 years. The fund is about what, 30-some million, and tell me some success stories.
Sure. So we raised $34 million US from over 100 investors, and we have invested about 70% of that. The way a fund works is we raise the money, and then we have 4 years to invest it, and then we have to sell everything over the second 4 years. So it's an 8-year fund.
8 years, yes.
And we've invested about 70% of the 34 million. And we've done 8 investments so far. And we've picked the basic sectors of the economy, and we tried to find the strongest company in each sector.
Yes.
So we're in the largest bank, Clayton Bank, which is a real success story. I'm very proud of this company, what it's achieved. We're a small shareholder, but it's a big position for our fund, our largest position now. Secondly, we've participated in a syndicated loan to GSM, the largest cell phone operator, and this company has a very strong position in its industry. Third, we've invested in creating a brewery, and we can talk more about that later.
All right.
But for those of us who like beer, we've invested in that sector. Fourth, we've invested in a seafood processing
Okay.
plant,
Okay.
which is the first in the country.
Yes.
We've helped finance a power grid to deliver electricity to 8,000 homes in Kampong Cham.
Yes.
We've invested in a property development project in Siem Reap
Yes.
and in a microfinance institution which gives loans to farmers so they can buy better seeds and fertilizer and get more rice when they harvest.
In this sort of selection, what are you looking for in the company that you're going to put a minority shareholding? You know, what drive that decision factor?
I think the most important thing is the management team of the company. We have to back people that we can trust, that they're both ethical, they're transparent, and they're good businessmen. So I think that's the first thing we look at is who's in charge of the company, and are they capable of growing the company in the way that they predict. So that's the most important thing. Second thing is the position is this a good industry to be in Cambodia, and is this likely to be a winner in that industry? Then we look at, can we get out on schedule? Is the company planning to go into the stock exchange, or are they going to sell some shares to a multinational later? So we have to think of our plan, how we're going to get out. So these are the key things that any fund looks at when they make an investment.
So basically, political stability is very important. It's primary decision making. And then when you come down to the decision making at the selection of the sector, you look at primarily sectors that are fundamental to the national economy. And then, if I understand you well, is the last criteria would be the management of the company. In this decision making, do you look a lot into the policy of the royal government? You know, in terms of trade policy, in terms of integration policy, in the ASEAN context, in the WTO context, intellectual property, trade liberalization. Are these factors that you take into consideration?
Certainly they're important. Normally we invest in what we call the competitive sectors of the economy. Normally we don't look for a special concession or a special monopoly, but we just invest in industries that have done well across Southeast Asia. So if we look back 30 years ago, 25 years ago into Indonesia or Thailand or Malaysia, which sectors were successful over the last few decades? And then we see in Cambodia, are those sectors open for investment? Are there many participants in those industries now? And how can we get positioned appropriately? Of course, the policies matter, but I think a general comment in Cambodia, it's a free market economy, which is different from many economies, which are partially free market. Even in America, it's not as free market as they like to say, but this is a real, true free market capitalism economy. So it's often not really driven by the government's policies other than opening the market. It's more driven by the competition between private sector companies. And we're comfortable to participate in that competition.
In the sector in itself, you mentioned a few of your investment there. I'm quite interested in area that I see a lot of value add, because in the case of Cambodia, we've been pretty much too focused up to now on garment industry. We have the tourism industry, the construction, which is the fundamental. But I do not think that we have benefit, or we have extract the most benefit from our trade liberalization, from the market access as opened by the accession to WTO, or for that matter in the regional context, ASEAN plus China, ASEAN free trade with Australia, New Zealand, for example. So sector that can bring value add and keep the value, the employment in the country, export at high value is very important. And I think you are investing, for example, in the seafood export. Tell me more about that.
Sure. I think the sector that has the most potential for this country is food processing. It's what we call value added. Cambodia has historically been a producer of food, of rice, also of other commodities like rubber and so on. But in recent years, it has added little value beyond growing the primary crop. So Cambodian farmers will grow rice and then put it in a truck and it goes to Vietnam or goes to Thailand, and they make most of the money off that rice by milling it and turning it into packaged food and so on. So what we have to do is to bring those industries into Cambodia, teach some of the farmers that they don't have to stand in the field and farm. They can stand in the factory and make a higher wage, a more steady income. Or maybe the children of the farmer can do that. So these industries are central to Cambodia's future growth prospects. We have put our funds money into one of those industries, which is shrimp processing. Cambodia has 400 kilometers of coastline, and every day hundreds of small boats go out and catch shrimp in the ocean. And they bring it back and sell it normally to Thai or Vietnamese processing companies that pick it up and bring it to their factories and hire people in their countries to process it. So we want to bring the processing here in Cambodia. So a shrimp that's born in Cambodia is sold as a Cambodian frozen packaged shrimp. So we've invested in a company called Nautisco Seafood Manufacturing. And I believe they're the first company to create a seafood plant of this magnitude. It's a world-class, high-tech seafood processing plant down near Sihanoukville province. So we've taken a minority stake in this company and helped them buy more equipment and further improve their factory. They've been going for 1 year now, and they've sold 11 40-foot containers of frozen shrimp to Japan, which is a remarkable achievement. Most people in business know that the standards in Japan are some of the toughest in the world. Because the Japanese are very picky about cleanliness and sanitation, as they should be. So for a Cambodian company to be selling the shrimp that might go on a sushi restaurant in Japan, I think is something for Cambodia to be proud of. The people working in this factory have, in most cases, never worked a job before, coming to work at 8 in the morning and leaving at 5 o'clock or something. So this is, for most of them, it's their first steady job. They've been taught to wear uniforms, to wash their hands 3 times before they go in the factory, and to follow a demanding process to create shrimp. The shrimp comes in as sort of a whole animal, and they take the shell off and the head off and all the different process, and sometimes they cook it, and it goes out in a frozen bag. It goes to Japan, and it's thawed out and served in a restaurant because it's clean and it's good. So this is an example of what Cambodia can achieve if it has capital and expertise and training. This country can do almost anything. We should not set limits and say we can't do that in Cambodia. We can. Now Tisco is showing a difficult industry that is possible. And it's selling premium products. It's not just the cheapest, but it's selling because it's high quality.
Well, I mean, the exciting thing is that it's dispelling the myth that Cambodia cannot export high value added. And particularly, you know, in international trade, the headache in international or regional trade is on SPS and TBT issue, phytosanitary issue. You know, and so many times we heard by, you know, people coming to the country, whether they're donor, whether the development agency, whether the private sector, they say, oh, Cambodia, you cannot meet the requirement of the importing country, the SPS, that sort of thing. You have proven that it can be done. You know, and particularly on SPS, if you can meet the Japanese requirement, believe me, you have reached the highest standard. So I hope they should be able to replicate in other sector of the industry as well. Any other success story you're proud of?
Just to finish on that now that there's a seafood processing plant, the door is open for other entrepreneurs to set up shrimp farming or fish farming, because we have a factory that can buy the output. So if we look in neighboring countries, every country in Southeast Asia has many shrimp farms. If you fly into Thailand, you look out the window and you see little shrimp ponds near the airport. There's millions of dollars being created every month from people growing that in their backyard and selling. So we've created an environment where another industry can develop as well. And this is how Cambodia will develop as a whole. Somebody will do one thing, and then it makes it possible for somebody else to do another industry. But the other sort of food processing business that we're in is in Kingdom Breweries, which is a brand new beer brewery. I don't know if you've had a chance to try it yet.
Yes, yes, of course.
But
yes.
when I moved here 3 years ago, I like to drink beer once in a while, and I tried the different beers in the market, and I felt that there's room for one more. Although we have good beer already, there's room for one more because consumers like to have a choice.
Yeah.
And we decided to position Kingdom as a premium high-end beer, as good as a beer you can get anywhere in the world. So we set a very high goal for ourselves, and we were able to find a very good location on the river, and we've created a new brewery there. It's a small one, but it's state-of-the-art. It's brand new equipment from Europe. We have a German brewmaster who's an expert at creating beer, and we use the best ingredients we could source around the world, but we use Cambodian water and Cambodian labor, and we created a beer with a Cambodian image. Kingdom is for Kingdom of Cambodia, so it's sort of a national beer in the premium segment. So our goal here is not to make cheap beer, but to make good beer and great beer, actually. Beer that can win awards around the world. So we hope to, in addition to serving the domestic market and the tourists and the Cambodians and expatriates that like a good beer, we also wish to export this into other countries because the world is always looking for something new, and we want to present Cambodia in a bottle on a label that people will pay a high price for, and they will say, I want that good Cambodian beer, not that cheap beer. So this is part of our repositioning of the image of Cambodia, that it can create world-class products.
Well, I hear you well, Doug. I think the exciting thing is that at least we can show that with the right technology, with the right mindset, with the right management, with the right approach, Cambodia can and is in position to exploit its own endowment and turn into something value added. So sky's limit. If you are successful in a frozen shrimp factory in Sihanoukville, nothing stops that somebody would do the same thing around the Great Lake with all this fish in abundance. If you can do the beer, high-end premium beer, nothing stops other Cambodian entrepreneur to move into soybean drink, to other sort of like food processing, juice processing, with the high end that meet the phytosanitary, will meet the health safety, and be able to, I don't want to use the word import substitution, but look, if it's produced here, it's cheaper, quality is good, consumer will have a choice. So in other words, is opening more variety for the local market. I think that we're coming to the end of our show, but before we close the show, I want to ask you a bit, how do you see your prospect of your fund moving in the future in the context of Cambodia future?
I could live anywhere, but I choose to live in Cambodia. I don't have any ties here except that I love this country and I'm very optimistic about its future. So I plan to hopefully spend the rest of my working life here. I may invest in other countries as well, but I would like this to be the global headquarters for Leopard Capital, basically. And that's because I think that when we look back, in 20 years, when I first visited Cambodia 20 years ago, the streets were not paved, there was no street lights, it was all very basic. And what's been created in the last 20 years is astonishing, remarkable, something for everybody to be very proud of. 20 years from now, I think that transformation will continue, and we will be looking at a very different country, a very modern, very admired country that other countries will point as an example of how a country can go from a conflict to a success story. I think we're halfway through that process, and it's looking very promising what will happen in the next 20 years. I think the government has done a very good job in creating an environment that will allow the entrepreneurial skills of Cambodians and foreigners to work together to create a modern nation here. So I'm very bullish, enthusiastic about the future here, and I plan to continue investing here as long as these opportunities exist.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I want to say that for a fund of your magnitude, which is the 30-some million, you've been able to stimulate, industry that can export, that create employment, create value for the country, create, in other words, hope for the country. I think money abounds in Cambodia, whether from the private sector, whether from the development partner, the local economy. I think it's there. It's a matter of moving the paradigm that we can do. Technology is available, expertise is available, and this is where I'm a firm believer of this trade economic liberalization, where your brewery, you bring a German brewmaster, right? He have expertise. You bring latest technology in brewing, so here it is, but we have our own expertise. You combine, you get something made in Cambodia. The sky's the limit for Cambodia. We should look to other sector like that, other industry like that, and I'm glad that Leopard Fund have paved the way and give a sense of hope of other entrepreneur, whether foreigner, whether local, to say, yes, Cambodia have a lot of natural resource, abundant supply of young labor, looking forward, looking outward, and we are open for business. And this is something that I probably would want to close a session by saying that thank you for bringing this message of hope, of can-do attitude, and this optimism for the future. So thank you very much, Dirk. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of our show, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.